Hello, today we're going to be talking about different types of graphs and how we can read and interpret or understand the data that they're showing us. The first type of graph we're going to talk about is called a scatter plot. Scatter plots show two different variables that can both be represented by numbers. Each point is represented by a dot, and what you're looking at is the pattern that the dots follow. We call that correlation. In order to find the correlation, we're first going to draw something called a line of best fit. It's going to show the general pattern that our dots are following. It's going to be a straight line, so it might not include all of the dots. So for example, in this first one, we might draw a line of best fit that looks like this. Notice it doesn't include all the dots, but it's showing the general pattern that the dots are following. For our second example, it might look like this. It doesn't include all the dots, but it's showing the general pattern. And then our last example. In this problem, there's not a way that I can draw a line that's going to accurately represent all the dots. They're kind of just randomly distributed. We'll talk about what to do if this comes up in just a second. Now that we drew in our lines of best fit, we can talk about the different types of correlation. You read a scatter plot from left to right. The way I like to think about it is, if I was walking on the line, would I be going up or down? So in this first example, if I'm walking along this line, I would be going up. That's called a positive correlation. On the second example, I would be going down. We call that a negative correlation. In our last example, we couldn't draw a line that represented all of the points. There's no pattern, so we call that no correlation. Remember that correlation is just a fancy word that means pattern. Now what we're going to talk about is, what's an example of a positive correlation? Or what might this graph be showing? So, maybe this graph is showing days worked and money. As you work more days, you're going to earn more money. When one increases, the other one also increases. That's called a positive correlation. Try and think of an example of a negative correlation. So an example of a negative correlation might be miles driven and gas. As you drive more miles, the amount of gas in your car is going to decrease. When one of them increases, the other one decreases. So you start off with a lot of gas, and as you drive, the amount of gas you have goes down. The last one is no correlation, or something that has no pattern. An example of this might be hours of TV watched and the size of the TV. If you watch the TV for more hours, it doesn't start growing. There's no relationship between how large the TV is and how much you watch it. You might think that, well, someone who has a big TV might really like television, so they would watch it more, but they could also just have a lot of money, and even though they have a big TV, they still don't watch it. So there's no correlation between those points. When you get a bigger TV, you don't automatically watch it more. When you watch more TV, your TV doesn't grow. So there's no correlation between those two pieces of data. The next thing we're going to talk about is a dot plot. In a dot plot, each dot represents one person or one piece of data. For this example, we're going to say that each dot represents a player, and we're showing the number of goals scored during the soccer season. We can see that we have one player who scored one goal. Okay. We have a gap. Then we have two players that scored 6 goals. We have also 2 players that scored 7 goals. We have 4 players that scored 8 goals. And then 6 players who scored 9 goals. Notice when I recreated my data set, I used the number of goals that they scored, not how many players did each thing. So this is showing visually, and I recreated the numbers. A dot plot can be very easily used to find the median because it's already in order from least to greatest. I would cross out from each side, and I can easily start finding my median. In this case, it would be 8. I could also recreate my data set if for some reason I needed to find the mean. I can also use a dot plot to find the mode, or which occurs the most often, because it would have the highest stack of dots. The last thing we're going to talk about is a bar graph. A bar graph is useful in showing things that don't have a number value. You might use it for a survey. Say if we asked kids at school, what is their favorite cereal? Here on the y-axis, we would have the number of students who answered each response. And across the x-axis, we would have the types of cereal. So we might have like Kix. We might have Rice Krispies. We might have like Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And we might have Cheerios. Okay, so they aren't necessarily in any particular order, so it doesn't matter if they follow some sort of pattern. There being more on the right than on the left doesn't matter. We're just looking and seeing how many kids like Kix cereal, how many like Rice Krispies, how many like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and how many like Cheerios. So this is good for showing a survey of something. In this case, we would say cereal choices. But again, it doesn't matter if there's more on the right or on the left because the cereals don't go in any particular order.